Great. Hello world, Podler team back at it again, doing more track 2 voicing, where we go over the various principles of Podler theory in sections with themed material. And now we are beginning a new one. It is the one of the last ones. And as far as the overall learning of the theory, it actually is the highest level that we kind of come at, which is the compare and contrast, which is kind of explaining what humans are doing and how to look at the various things we've been doing through a Podler lens. So I'll do introductions, then a quick preamble, and then we'll get started. I am Nai G. Coach.
I'm
sorry, I forgot. We do different here. And with me I have Nai G, Mitchell, Ben, and Glenn. Okay, so the preamble is, this is very, very exciting for me personally, because this is, and maybe I think also for you all, we're similar in a lot of ways, this is actually where Podler theory came from. Although learning it makes sense to kind of learn the programming of everything and then what layers on top of that up into the CNC. Actually, I was dropped into the world as a very sensitive Nai G, surrounded by, you know, white people are like this, black people are like this, Christians do this, Muslims do this, rich people do this, poor people do this.
It goes on and on.
It goes on and on and on and on.
It goes
Lots
forever,
of
basically.
opinions about what humans are and what it all means and being pushed at me. So actually that was the need. That was the need to figure them out and find a way to make sense of all these differing strong opinions on the human condition and the meaning of existence. And so everything actually came all the way down to the human qualia phenomenon, the Mojo phenomenon, which is a very techie forensic thing we lead with. Actually, that was the last thing I was doing. I was trying to figure out this stuff, but they're all related. They are one case. Okay. Actually, while we're at it, the way that the methodology for Mojo reading came about simultaneously was I was reading humans. I was reading the story, and I was actually doing 5th gear. I started 5th gear, and I was doing very advanced 5th gear, very you know, nuanced, profound 5th gear, because I wasn't even trying to really read them so much. I was actually trying to read me. I felt myself being thrown around. I registered that people and stories and things I heard about from people, their lives and what goes on with it, it would move me. And the way they would do things would move me. And I was trying to figure out, why am I being moved like this? To do that, I had to figure out the maneuvers. To figure out the maneuvers, I had to figure out their instruments. And then that kind of got 5th gear fully there. And then for 5th gear, I actually worked down to the lower gears, which is what we start teaching with, so people know that it's there. But I know you guys talk about a lot as well. The higher gears actually make more sense to me natively and are stronger. All right, so let's get into the CNC. This is some meaty stuff. All right, Ben, are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, totally.
All right, let's do this. Oh, one other thing. Pretty much whenever you talk to someone, this is in life in general, but definitely if you're a Jez hunter. If you're a Jez hunter, there is basically one all-pervasive way to things, which makes for one all-pervasive code of conduct for living. And thus, it's one conversation about that. This is the one conversation, because whenever you talk with people, everything they say, everything they do, the way they stand, what they look at, what they buy, it implies, right, the not hidden meetings, what they believe in. And there's this ongoing conversation everyone is expressing. And then when you start talking to them about anything, you're actually going to be bringing in what they believe the human condition to be and the meaning of existence. So this is going to set the scene and talk about the big players. Ben, what is the one great case? What does it, oh, real quick, I changed one thing, the paragraphing. You see the one that says heroic pioneer, true seeker?
Yeah.
There's a sentence above it. I actually took that sentence and put it up to the bottom of the first paragraph. Because actually it's still, it's still part of the one great case. Okay.
So you took the first sentence and wrote pioneer, truth seeker and put it in the bottom of one great case?
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, cool. All right, so what is the one great case? What does it include? What context does it give? What does the nature of this case imply? What is the crucial quality for working on this case?
All humans, regardless of their innate nature or cultural conditioning, are working on the same singularly important, all-encompassing one great case of understanding the human condition and the meaning of existence. This includes all scientific thought and spiritual belief that has ever made any inquiries or assertions regarding the true way of the one and the all, the seen and the unseen, the tangible and the intangible, the known and the unknown. From this context, all human endeavor can be seen as working towards understanding the infinite mystery we are all a part of, just coming at the incomprehensible immensity of it from different starting positions. The nature of this one great case being worked on implies the way it needs to be approached in order for one to be the ideal vessel to reach greater understanding of highest truth and the highest way of it to be enacted.
Cool. So same protocols as before. If you have any questions, go ahead.
Cool. So I'm having trouble answering what context does this give?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the second question.
Actually, the
Maybe-
third
maybe-
question.
So
the
maybe
third one.
It's what?
It's the third question.
Oh, thank you. So it goes to this third sentence. Let me see what I was trying to go for. Maybe I can make a better question.
I know it says from this context somewhere in the paragraph. I think it's the last sentence before, well, second last sentence total.
For the one that got moved up, the last, yeah.
What? Which part? So there's basically 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 questions. There's 5 sentences, right?
4 questions, 4 sentences.
What? Yeah, there's 5 questions.
5?
I'm not sure how many sentences there are, but there's 5 questions.
Oh.
1.
Yeah,
Only have
it's
4 in the first
four
sentence.
sentences.
Okay, 1,
I'm
2,
missing a
3,
question.
4. Ah, I see. Okay.
It might just be combined in that sentence. Is that it? Or
Yeah. Okay. So actually, skip that one. Skip that question.
okay.
What question?
What
The-
context does it give?
Are there 5 questions?
There's 5 questions, 4 sentences.
That's interesting. I only have 4.
You have 5
Questions.
questions. The questions are in the sidebar, Mitchell.
I don't have a sidebar.
You're looking
I'm
at
on my
the.
phone.
So where do you have the questions?
The ones that Coach sent me earlier today.
Oh, yes. The first question for the next beat goes on there.
I see.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think I messed up. So let's see. The first question is what it includes.
Yeah, even the second question there, Coach. What does this nature of this case imply? Shouldn't that be? What does this include? Like what? Because
Okay, so the first sentence is good. The second one is the question is what does it includes, and this sentence starts off with this includes. So that's good to go.
Okay. I see that.
Then
And then the implication is the from this context sentence.
yes,
All right.
all human endeavor can be seen as working towards understanding, et cetera.
Yep.
Yeah, so just take out the context question. That's my bad.
Okay.
I added a question that shouldn't have been there. Go ahead. Does it make sense now?
Yeah, to me it makes sense.
I'll post the new.
All right, I think I can do it.
Oh, here, I'm just going to post a new set of 4 on the sidebar. So people
All right.
see it.
The thing about the crucial quality one, though, is that it seems like it does actually apply to the second sentence of the next paragraph, too. So is it a question apply to kind of both of them?
Let me put in the sidebar because I'm going to separate these so I can see them easier.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Put like a little dash.
It's like if you move that question up, then that question's missing from the next one, and it still seems like it applies. Even taking out what we take out.
Well, okay, the first question is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, the second question is, what does this include? The sentence is, this includes. So that's
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
From this context.
Then from this context, what context does it give?
Actually, from
And
this
then-
context, that's what my confusion. From this context actually is referring to the second sentence.
Oh.
It's basically saying, with that context established.
Okay, but then the next one, what does the nature of this case imply? The nature of this one great case being worked on implies the way
Right.
it needs to be approached.
So that seems good.
So it's only the
Yeah.
third question that needs to be adjusted there?
Okay, so let's make a better wording for it.
Sure.
What I was trying to go through and find the conditional wording, and then kind of play it back as a question. So includes, got that.
I think it makes sense to me, the third question.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine too.
But I
be honest.
I could understand what it was trying to say. I mean, from this context, it's implying that all human endeavor can be seen as working towards understanding the infinite mystery we're a part of.
Okay.
I honestly just like it as it is, honestly.
Okay.
I don't think
All
there's
right.
any changes to me.
So anyway, then that is the new 4 question there on the sidebar.
Okay.
All right, Ben, you said you're.
All right, I'll just go here.
Cool.
All right, so the one great case is essentially the fact that there's one great case that we're all working on, that all scientific and spiritual thought is essentially headed towards. Every thought and every way that humans are going is headed towards this one great case and is trying to understand this one great case or expressing some form of understanding of this one great case. And again, this includes all scientific and spiritual thought that humans are taking part in. There's all spiritual models, ideas, memes, etc. Everything is essentially headed towards that, is attempting to describe that in some way. That every human is coming at this from a different direction. Everyone has a perspective on this one great case. Everyone's perspective is limited, but there's essentially truth that can be found in many different perspectives, but some are more complete than others, some are better than others, and essentially some people know more of what they're doing because there's a lot of untruth out there as well. So it's important to weigh in on the merits of different models and ideas, which is what we're doing with the CNC portion here. Quality when working on this case is that there's an ideal way in which you can get the highest insights you can from natural law and be the best person, the best person you can be to work on this one great case.
Got it.
The nature of this case implies what exactly?
The way it needs to be worked on. Sort of like studying the stars implies the telescope. If there's a better way, it'll also show itself at some point, because the stars kind of require a certain way of studying them to get good data.
Right.
Makes sense?
So how does that get answered in the paragraph?
Are you asking how to answer the fourth question?
The third question.
Third question?
What does the nature of
Only
this
four
case
questions.
imply? That question is answered by the nature of this one case being worked on implies the way it needs to be approached in order for one to be the ideal vessel to receive greater understanding of highest truth and the highest way for it to be
The third question isn't answered by that sentence. That's answered
No, the third
by
question
previous
isn't.
sentence. Yeah.
And what is the nature of this case?
The third
imply?
question is asking what does the nature of this case imply, which is answered by the from this context. All human endeavor can be.
A little bit. Okay, so the nature.
It's confusing because it mentions implies in the paragraph or in that sentence, but it's not referring to the same thing. if that
Then
makes sense.
what's the next question?
Hold on,
What is the crucial
It's not
quality?
one-to-one? Should be. So
What is the crucial quality for working on this case? Yeah, that's the
I'm working
implied
on a
sentence.
different question than you guys originally was.
No, you aren't.
Okay,
Unless
it
you
seems-
didn't calibrate to work on the same question.
It seems like the third question is being answered in the fourth sentence.
okay.
The nature of this one great case, that's the fourth sentence, and it seems to be the third question, though.
Okay, you're right. Okay,
Yeah.
so then I should take the, let me see here. Do you want to switch? I think the paragraph's the most important, so we will go with that ordering first. What sounds better then? Let me see here. Let me pull them out. Because I just added that question from the paragraph in front. So now I'm thinking now where would it,
Crucial quality for working on this case, either that's asking the same thing or that's alluding to the next sentence.
I honestly don't think the third statement is referring to the fourth question. I think they're actually in right order right now.
I don't know.
I
kind
don't
of a
think
bit
the third
confused.
question makes sense in regards to the fourth sentence.
Is it possible to maybe break those up a little bit and then see them separately so that we're able to?
I think that the difficulty is that the word implies is used, but I'm not sure it's the same implies as mentioned in the question.
Pick it up a little bit.
I think it could be though. I think it would make it clear because
Yeah.
it's words, but I think it could be because it's all kind of talking about the same topic. I think I'm going to go with so all humans, regardless, one great case. This includes all scientific thought. The nature of this one case implies from this context. So I'm going to I switched the third and fourth sentences. So then I'm going to change the wording of the question.
I think
Okay.
that's good. If you want to do that, I think, yeah, that would be helpful.
So you're changing the sentences now.
No, the questions, I think.
I think he switched the sentences and he's changing
I
questions.
switched the sentence order in the paragraph.
So what's the third sentence?
I switched it so that it matches the questions.
All right.
So it goes right now, Mitchell. The first two sentences stayed as they were. Third sentence is the nature of this one great case,
Being worked on implies the way it needs
Yes.
to be.
and then the fourth sentence is from this context. Here, I'll put them in the sidebar for us.
Okay. I can't see the sidebar, but
Oh, okay.
It would still be beneficial for me. I think.
All right, here I'll copy it.
Yeah, I put it in twice there. I didn't know.
So we're going to keep the questions. Questions are as they are on the sidebar there. All right, so here we go. Oh. You see it?
Yeah.
It seemed like the heroic pioneer truth seeker statement really goes hand in hand with the previous sentence, the one that was moved up. And the reason why I say that is because the question basically that question seems to also include the next sentence, the quality that transcends all historic, cultural, and professional backgrounds, that being heroic truth seeker.
I think it matches nicely though now with the wording, because it's what is one great case, and that's the directly spoken in the first sentence. Then it says what does it include. The next sentence says it includes. So it's, you know what I mean, the words match for the questions. And third one is what does the nature of this case imply? The sentence is the nature of this thing being worked on implies. And then it is what is the crucial quality. And then now it says maybe the fourth question should be better. This kind of all.
Oh, I'm saying like on the next beat, the quality that transcends all historic, cultural, and professional backgrounds, that being a growth.
That applies to the second sentence.
The previous sentence is kind of feeding into that.
No, I think, Coach, you were right there. The context should be mentioned in the question, right? Is that what you're saying?
No. Well, I was saying we took out the context questions. So there's now only 4 questions. The context one isn't there anymore.
Yeah. On this context, all human endeavor. It's mentioned in the 4th sentence, though.
Okay, so let's go with that one. Thank you. Let's go with the question being, how do you use the word context in there? What can be understood in this context? How about that?
Sure.
Right, that's perfect now. I think
that's
that works perfect.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you being patient with me.
No worries. I mean, these questions and beats and stuff, they're not necessarily the most easiest thing to develop, and it's a process.
It's enormously complex because it's not just like, it's hard to really create a one-to-one relationship between.
I think we do have a good formula though now.
Yeah.
The word. Yeah. There should be like, you know, like this gives.
Well, I can't do that all the time. I've tried that before. It doesn't always work, but it's a useful tool that works a good amount of the time. So yes, on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it can be vague, or maybe it might not be enough information.
Exactly. All right.
It's just me and Mitchell, so I think I can probably go.
All right. So here is the new. Here's the new. The new. 4 questions. There you go.
All right. I like this. Okay. So I'll go. So essentially every human being is working on what is known as the one great case, and this is basically the trying to understand the human condition and all of existence in its totality. This includes many scientific and spiritual thought, forms of thought, any models and that sort of stuff that are all working to trying to figure this one universal, most like initial kind of question, the most important kind of, you know, like question that is at the root of everything, basically. They're all trying to essentially answer this question. They're by trying to understand the known, the unknown, the seen, the unseen, every single quality in that respect. It all encompasses the one and the all, and humans are trying to approach this trying to answer this question from a multitude of different angles. And yeah, so that's kind of like, it includes all of the ways in which people are going about doing it. The nature of this case implies that one needs to become the proper kind of vessel in order to properly receive the truth from, you know, asking these kinds of questions. And that means having a sort of character, a certain kind of being a truth seeker and that sort of thing. That's kind of like what you need to become in order to be able to answer those kinds of questions. And what can be understood from this context is that everyone is essentially working on this case, as I said before, and we're all going about it from different, you know, perspectives and different angles. But essentially, despite all the different starting positions, we are essentially all working towards getting to the same truth, which is natural law, essentially, and trying to answer the question of what the human condition and, you know, the meaning of existence.
Got it.
It gave a good structure, the questions, how they were able to relate to the question, to the sentences. It gave me something to work off of. It's not always possible with some of the questions. Sometimes I have to ignore the questions entirely and just focus on the beats in order to get the beat. But having the 1-to-1 ratio of the questions and the
the goal is that the questions, even if you don't say, they have referencing words from the actual paragraphs themselves, but they trigger that I need a principle, and each sentence is supposed to capture a principle or a facet. Right? That's the goal.
Exactly. And it has to be as clear and concise as possible. And that's why I was talking about with the words. Those can be used as sort of like triggers, but they don't necessarily, it's not always correct, I guess, for them to be used in every situation.
No, yeah, I do like using it a lot for that reason, but yes, sometimes it works out that it'll sort of give away the answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to actually, you can't always use it.
Right.
I use it a lot.
Okay. Let's finish this up. So the one great case is this singularly important, all-encompassing case that all humans are working on, regardless of nature and cultural conditioning. And it includes all scientific thought and spiritual belief, which has ever made an inquiry's assertion into one and the all, seen and the unseen, tangible and intangible, the known and the unknown. And the nature of this case implies the way it needs to be approached in order for a person to be the ideal vessel to gain understanding of highest truth and enact it in the highest way. And from this context, all human endeavor can be seen as working towards understanding the infinite mystery that we're all part of, and just coming at the immensity of it from different starting positions.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that. The principles, that's kind of like what should set the tone as far as like how we answer the questions. Because sometimes I run the risk of sometimes getting caught up with the words that are being used and trying to hit each like word exactly.
Right.
And that can take away from being able to focus on the principle and overall meaning of this is actually what we're trying to say. And as far as how you say it, what words you use, that's up to you.
Yeah,
but
that's
just hit this.
choice.
Yeah, hit the principle of this principle. Yeah.
Exactly. Because then you don't have to memorize it, but also it then becomes like an internalized, way you play. And so it just comes out very quick and smooth and natural in your normal discourse if you do have a command of the principles. Because you may express a lot of these principles, you may express thousands of times in your lifetime. Some of the ones that they're very contentious, you know what I mean, like a legal thing, like, red herring fallacy. Oh, you know what I mean? Ad hominem, certain principles that you if you ever debate people, you probably are like, I'm going to be citing that a lot. So you may change how you say each time as long as you are aware of what a strongman fallacy is. You know what I mean? As long as you know what it is, can spot it, and can explain to someone what it is, you're good to go.
And I think that also shows more mastery than anything.
It does.
because you're able to then be more fluid as far as like being able to use that principle in a multitude of different kinds of situations as compared to having like a one shot, one kill kind of. Like I only have one answer for one specific question, and if I'm never, unless I have that, exact specific context situation hit me, I'm not
Marco
going to
Rubio.
have the answer.
Right.
Otherwise, if I do have that situation, it's sort of like blah 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 blah. It's
Yeah.
like,
So it's more masterful, and as a part of that, you have more practical application. All right, Mitchell, you are up next for the readouts. What is this state of being able to do? What is the unifying theme of its principles?
Right. Did you ask anything about the crucial quality for working
quality
on this
that
case?
transcends.
Ah,
I would put that back in, yeah, because that's a good question actually. That's why.
yeah. I think my ordering got off. I told you, sequencing sometimes on my.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's
Is that it seemed
That's
like it belonged
exactly.
in this paragraph
Yeah,
too.
I was
essentially.
actually thinking it was.
I think when I pulled
The
that one
quality that
sentence out, it threw
transcends.
my.
I talked about that earlier, but you guys were focusing on other stuff.
Okay, so
Me too.
thank you. Okay, so there actually should be 3 questions then. What was that? How was that question worded before? Do you guys remember? Because I think I had a good wording.
What is the crucial quality for working on this case?
Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that gets into the heroic pioneer beat.
Okay.
The
So
first
what is the quality? Okay, here
Yeah,
we
that's
go.
what we're doing.
Perfect. Okay. Here's the new 3 beats. Thank you guys. All right. What is the crucial quality for working on this case? What is the state of being able to do? What is the unifying theme of its principles?
All right then. The quality that transcends all historic, cultural, and professional backgrounds is that of being a heroic pioneer truth seeker. This state of being is able to find the most truth and hold onto it, even when it is complicated, uncomfortable, or demanding, as well as the courage to navigate and surf the waves of emergency, opportunity, adventure, mystery, the unfolding of existence, including one's self-development, continually brings. The principles of being a heroic pioneer truth seeker honor all methods of seeking and enacting highest truth to the degree that they are worthy according to the true way of things, which is always in a state of being discovered.
All right, I can go.
Cool.
All right, so the crucial quality for working on this case is being a heroic pioneer truth seeker. And essentially what that means is that one is gaining the most truth that they essentially possibly can from their spirits and from natural law, while at the same time they have the courage and the confidence to sail like any waves that come their way regarding truth, like emergency or adventure. And the reason for this is because if you may be open, you may generally feel like you're open to highest truth, but if you don't have the courage to ride the waves, then you won't actually get as far as a heroic pioneer, because you won't be essentially moving to locations spiritually that you need to be in order to get there, essentially. So it's that combined state of being at the most elevated level you can in your psyche, such that you can consume as much truth as possible, while also being very courageous and being able to go out and ride the waves of adventure and all those other forms. And one of the unifying the unifying theme of its principles is that essentially everyone is, with everyone working on this one great case, everyone has has things to contribute, has models to contribute, right? And there are always, well, not necessarily always, but generally speaking, there's going to be things of value in every model and every principle, that people, generally speaking, provide. There's some that are just outright false, but generally speaking. But the point is that as a heroic pioneer, what you should be doing is you should be giving the appropriate level of honoring and weight to those models and those beliefs that they deserve, given the level of truth and purity that they have.
Boom.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can try to do this one. All right. So the crucial quality for working on this case is essentially to want to become or to bring the sort of heroic pioneer, truth seeker kind of energy or embodiment of spirit into that kind of line of work. This state of being is capable of doing more so than any other kind of any sort of other kind of way of being as like a career profession or anything like that, any kind of title, because essentially to want to be a heroic pioneer, truth seeker, you're going to be approaching everything from the perspective of wanting to be the absolute most accepting of truth kind of person, a vessel, I guess you could say, to receive those kinds of truths from from natural law, I guess you could say, from all of existence. And it also it encompasses with it being heroic, which is also very important, because sometimes you're going to have times when you're going to have to really get your courage up and have to deal with certain kinds of personal issues that might get on you, and then you're going to have to be able to go forward anyways. And so it embodies essentially the best of a person. And so the capabilities of what a person is able to do when they're in that kind of a mindset, when they're in that kind of a state, is much more so than any other kind of mazut form that can be taken. The unifying theme essentially of what it means to be a heroic pioneer, truth seeker, is that you're always honoring the way in which this sort of character is being represented or being enacted by anyone and everyone that's enacting this kind of a character to any sort of like a decent degree. So obviously not every single person who's trying to be a heroic pioneer, truth seeker is doing a good job of it. But if you are trying to be that, then essentially you are going to be bringing a certain kind of high character to it, which is important and necessary. And yeah, so does that kind of answer it there?
Just that how well they do, there is a universal scale called natural law, and everyone has to be weighed. And truth seekers basically, give things their weight. Even if say you may oppose a way of belief in general, you do give aspects of it credit that deserve credit.
I see.
But then even if you like something overall, if there are principles that you think don't hold up to natural, like, I like a lot of what you're doing, but not that. So basically you have to do every principle that can be thought of, each one's its own case. And so you may agree or disagree, and that's how it should be done. No one actually gets a negative tone or a overly positive tone. They actually simply get measured by each attempt they made.
Right. Yeah.
Which is all heroes should really want, is a fair accounting.
Yeah, fair accounting. Don't fluff it up for me. Don't ignore certain things that I did that were actually worthy of being acknowledged.
Exactly.
Just give me a fair assessment, and that's kind of like, yeah, because it can be equally annoying in both respects.
Definitely. And so this is kind of we're setting the scene, and I think you guys agree. If you don't, ever have any questions or want to even just add your own take on it, this is kind of like when I've discussed things over the years, and I've had impact on people, and I've also seen kind of where the landscape goes. Talking to people who are religious or not religious, all the different kinds of religious backgrounds they can have, all the different kind of psychological schools of thought they can have. Generally, this seems to be sort of like an unspoken code. We're kind of codifying it here, but among truth seekers, you guys recognize them. We talk to them. You're like, they have a way of conducting themselves, and I was trying to think of it. What is that? I believe it's this. There's some underlying premises that all truth seekers just sort of are the givens. So we're stating the givens, and I think they're very strong givens. I don't see how anyone could have a problem with it. It's asking you to be all you can be, let everyone else be all they can be, and be all we can be together. And I don't know how else you would come at the equation.
Yeah, I mean, that's like basically, the goal of life. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really honorable. I like that principle.
And it's very important to when you are talking to people who come from different backgrounds and you may have principles where you have contention, that you sort of establish like a goodwill, and that you have a very high way of conducting yourself. You state like how you approach cases. Or like, okay, even if I don't agree with your findings, I have to say you are a seeker. Not all seekers agree. You know what I mean? I think if you're a true seeker, you could even say like, your speculations on certain speculative things, I have different speculations. But overall, when we're talking about things that are obvious and natural law sort of shown us clearly, we're down. So I can respect that, and you can respect me. That's tricky. Mutual respect while not having necessarily the same opinion in everything.
Yeah.
But there's certain, like scientists, there's certain science that's kind of been done. We know certain things, and so actually fitting your experiments numbers and going against those principles, that's just wrong. No true scientist can get behind that. But on the other hand, if it's not proven yet, then we can disagree. We can disagree strongly. We can do experiments, try to get funding, write dissertations. That's all allowed.
Yeah, it seems like people would kind of they go back and forth between two extremes, right? Like when you talked about in terms of people like respecting each other's opinion. What I mean? That's a pretty common theme that's talked about a lot. You should always respect the other person's opinion. But then there gets into this misappropriation of that, such that if you disagree with somebody, that's like disrespecting their opinion or something.
Exactly.
And then you can go the other way, where like literally you just think that you have the right to just rant about everyone in public that you disagree with, constantly in this disrespectful way. So it's like intentionally being disrespectful.
Being respectful versus pandering.
Yeah.
So we want to basically just stick with truth. Truth is what we're serving, and we're trying to basically truth and the whole species. I think everyone kind of agree that's a good way to come at it. And just there are certain models of thought, and we'll talk about some of those being issues down the line, where they're unable to come at that. That's also something. If you're talking to someone and they're presenting themselves as a true seeker, ask them. You brought this up in actually like demon slaying. This can happen in real life where they actually present themselves. Mitchell, I've seen you do this a lot. I'm very logical. Well, then why'd you commit 3 logical fallacies within 2 sentences? Do you know what I mean? So people will claim everyone who does this kind of stuff or talks the human condition likes to believe they're a seeker in some way. So you had to kind of explain, these are seeker principles. I don't think anyone can really disagree with these. And then from there, now let's measure how we're all doing. And then it is what it is. All right. Who hasn't gone here on this one?
I think it's me.
Cool.
Are you sure has Mitchell gone yet?
For which speed? The Hero Pioneer Truth Seeker one.
Yeah.
I think it's me. yeah, I think you have gone, Glenn.
I mean, if you want to go again, I don't mind, but I mean, I haven't gone yet.
Okay, so
really?
So then okay, maybe we're talking about stuff. That's cool. All right, so then Glenn and Mitchell both have to go. Whoever wants to go first, jump in.
I thought you did go, Glenn. Heroic Pioneer Truth Seeker.
Oh, yeah, I just went. It is Mitchell's turn. I thought you were talking about scientific seekers.
Yeah, we haven't.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because I thought Coach was asking who's going to be reading out the next sentence.
No worries.
The next
Oh, I see. That makes a lot more sense. Okay.
No confusion there. All right, Mitchell, so when you're ready.
Okay, so the crucial quality for working on this case is being the heroic truth seeker, and it transcends all cultural, historic, and professional backgrounds. This state is about really being able to hold on to the most truth, even if it's complicated, demanding, or uncomfortable, and having the courage to navigate any waves of emergency, adventure, opportunity, and mystery that just the general unfolding of existence, even one's self-development, is going to bring. And the unifying theme is honoring things according to whether seeking according whether it's actually truth seeking and kind of coming at things in the highest way possible, and that's always in a state of being discovered.
Cha-ching. All right, so Glenn, what are scientific seekers? What do they often focus on? What do they need to do in order to be complete?
Right, so scientific seekers are generally those who favor understanding highest truth using logic and evidence. Therefore, scientific seekers often focus more on the lower areas of the SS index at first, that have powers of the psyche that are more naturally suited to understanding and interacting with truth in a rational and verifiable way. However, if it is highest truth being discovered and followed fully, it will eventually lead to an integration with one's spiritual understanding, as science and spirituality are merely two sides of one holistic spectrum. Two sides of the same coin.
Yep.
All right, I think I can go. Scientific seekers are generally people who prefer to understand natural law from a more scientific point of view. And this generally comes with more of a focus on powers of the psyche that are more on the lower side of the SS index, more logic and evidence-based form of understanding natural law, essentially. This can be very effective, and it can be very useful to hone in on a scientific understanding. In fact, I would say that everyone needs to have times where they hone in on more of the scientific side of things and more spiritual side of things. You can never really stay completely balanced between the two forever. You kind of have to go back and forth all around the spectrum.
And it really is one spectrum. It's just what part are you on it?
Yeah, which part are you focusing on, or so that can be very effective, but they need to, in general, come to a more, eventually they're going to need to come to a point where you can't just focus on one side of the spectrum and only do that. You eventually have to unify that with a spiritual understanding if you're going to have the most holistic understanding of natural law that you possibly can. So,
got it.
All right, yeah. Pretty straightforward. They're good questions when they're straightforward answered. So basically, scientific seekers are those who choose to approach understanding truth. They're truth seekers, but they approach truth seeking from a very scientific perspective, from a very scientific angle. They approach it from a more rational, logic-centered, verifiable data kind of angle, where they're really trying to get down onto the more harder, younger pieces of natural law that they're trying to understand everything from that kind of perspective, as I suppose their initial kind of foot going forward, kind of way of positioning themselves towards natural law. They focus on essentially that, and essentially when it comes to the spirituality.
I think you actually captured that in your first. I think you got the first two questions.
Yeah, I just want to mention that they focus on the scientific end of the spiritual SS index, which is, basically, if you were to put powers to it, V, Vi, Xi, and Z, those four powers. And those are very much associated with logic and literal data. They need, in order to be considered more complete, in order to have a more holistic, full experience, and to access other areas within their own peak pathway, which they are essentially going to be doing to some degree anyways, but it's more about trying to acknowledge that you're doing it, and then understanding that you have that area that also needs to be developed and appreciated, which is they need to develop their spiritual side as well. And in order to give a more holistic understanding of everything that's going on, because essentially the scientific as well as the spiritual side of things, they're both two sides of one holistic spectrum.
Mission when he's ready.
It's funny, you mentioned rational in the scientific seekers one. The spiritual aspect is also still rational, though, is it not? Is it not?
It is, but they really all the words interchangeable as far as a positive way of coming about it. Scientists are also, abstract. So there's not a one-to-one. It's just a general starting point. So being rational is usually seen as being the opposite of emotional.
Okay. Well, then should we use those words then? Emotional versus unemotional?
Say again?
Like, for the scientific seekers one, interacting with truth in an unemotional way, would that make more sense to you?
I think rational is a stronger word than unemotional. They do have a bit of a synonym quality to them, which is good. But I actually think that since they are kind of synonyms,
you could replace it with something like, I guess, reasoned. I'm not sure if that's
I like that
worse than rational. I don't know.
Reasoned.
There's a lot of words you can use, really.
No, actually, they're not, because unemotional and rational both imply being dispassionate. Being reasoned means you think on it well.
Okay, but people tend to think about that more in terms of like logical argument. But
with him, reasoned literally means to come up with reasons. You actually could reason on anything. Well, let's actually look up the words. But anyway, I think
level-headed.
Yeah, I mean, when I say reasoned, I think a lot of people think about that more like rational. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that's correct. People could have a weird way of understanding words, I guess.
You also said more naturally suited, not necessarily exclusively suited. So
true.
I think it's fine.
Okay, so to me, it seems like these words have some similar qualities: reasoned, rational, unemotional. To me, since I think rational is the word that is closer to what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think all of them are good, to be honest. There's a lot of words you can use, but that one sounds like a good one to me.
The only thing that I mentioned is because when it comes to
I not yet heard why the word rational has any hole for what its purpose is. If you guys know me, if I hear anything like that, I'll be quick to adjust and fix any kind of.
I think rational is fine. I don't see anything wrong with it at all.
Cool.
Personally.
Rational implies irrationality. That's the thing. And so if you're saying scientific seekers are rational, then it's kind of like saying spiritual seekers are irrational.
No, it says these ones are more naturally suited to understanding and interacting with truth in a rational and verifiable way. So that's kind of the side of it that they focus on, but it's not that the other ones are irrational.
Right. For example,
and scientists.
Glenn, I see what you're trying to do with your Xi, and maybe this will help you out, because I see what you're doing, but there's a fine distinction I think you may not accounted for, which is you're implying a negative. There doesn't have to be. It can be a neutral. So it could be neutral and then rational. Because, for example, you may come at things on the spiritual side, right, from a, let's use the word, humanistic point of view. That doesn't mean that the other side is inhumane.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That if we did every word, if we assumed that the opposite was the negative, that would be problematic, a lot of grammar. But sometimes the context is, the other option is a neutral. So the scientific seeker compared to neutral, not negative, not to irrationality, compared to neutral, it's rational. Compared to neutral, say spiritual seekers may seem more humane, but that doesn't, I'm not implying, I think it won't be reasonable to actually check every dichotomy like this, where the other side, now I know what you're saying, because sometimes we do that, you know what I mean? But sometimes the other side of the dichotomy is actually just, it's setting how it's based on neutral. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I really like it when you're able to do the dichotomies correctly, though. It just feels really like.
But that's what I'm saying is I don't believe this is incorrect.
I know it's just.
Because if I hear saying, and I do use that Xi principle a lot, but I don't want to overdo it and cramp on my Ni and G, which is not being able to use any descriptive words of attributes, because everything else that's not that is automatically the negative reciprocal of it.
Not negative, but opposite.
No, you actually could be neutral versus being rational. You could be combined, rational / humanistic.
Yeah.
So in a spectrum of, rational versus humanistic thinking, on that spectrum, there doesn't actually need to be, in that dichotomy, there doesn't need to be on the other side of rational, irrational.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to design so you see here. Let's say there's a center that's neutral. On one side, if you go this much in the good, it's rational. You go this much in the good, it's humanistic. You go too far past that, you get flaky. You go too far this past it, you get irrational. You get irrational versus inhumane.
I was reading the beats there, so I wasn't able to focus. But I feel like both paragraphs are essentially the same. It's just the words that are being used to distinguish each of the differences are essentially rational, verifiable data versus relationships and intuition.
Right.
So yeah, I mean,
I believe they're all positive. I don't believe anyone gets a negative in this equation.
yeah, I just want to pick the perfect words in a way to describe that, because we're talking about essentially Xi and V. And
Right, but if we use, for example, reasoned.
It doesn't have to be reasoned.
Yeah, that was actually like my suggestion. Although I didn't really suggest it. I just said it was a possibility.
Okay.
I think it makes sense that scientific seekers favor being rational. In fact, when you listen to scientists talk, they'll frequently say a rational, well-reasoned approach. I mean, it's like a little thing they say a lot. So, I mean,
Yeah.
It kind of seems like the only words, this group we're talking about, scientific seekers, I'm kind of using words they themselves have chosen to describe themselves. So.
All right, then.
Cool.
Shall I be going now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so scientific seekers are those who favor using logic and evidence in order to understand highest truth. And so they often focus more on the lower areas of the SS index because that's where the powers of Sticky are located, which are more naturally suited to understanding and interacting with the truth in a rational and verifiable way. And in order to be complete, and if they follow highest truth all the way, then they will need to integrate their scientific understanding with spiritual understanding because they're two sides of one holistic spectrum.
All right, back to you, Ben.
All right.
What are spiritual seekers? What do they often focus on? What do they need to do in order to be complete?
Spiritual seekers are generally those who favor understanding highest truth using personal experience as well as speculation or faith. Therefore, spiritual seekers often focus more on the upper areas of the SS index at first, that are powers of the psyche that are more naturally suited to understanding and interacting with truth in terms of relationships and intuition. However, if it is highest truth being discovered and followed fully, it will eventually lead to an integration with one's scientific understanding, as science and spirituality are merely two sides of one twisted spectrum. All right, I can do this.
Okay.
Spiritual seekers are those who tend to favor focusing on faith and personal experience or speculation over, reason and evidence at first. This focus tends to bring in a great attention to the higher powers on the SS index, the higher part of the SS index, which has corresponding powers that are more associated with intuition and emotions and personal experiences. But in order to be complete, there needs to be a union with the scientific end of the spectrum. If one's to keep advancing their understanding, eventually they're going to need to do that to have the highest understanding of natural law that they can. You can approach it from either side, but you still have to meet the other end eventually.
Indeed.
To get the most out of it.
Good.
All right, I think I can go.
Cool.
So with spiritual seekers are essentially those who approach trying to understand natural law, trying to understand the one case that we're all essentially working on from the position of approaching it from a more spiritual angle. So they focus a lot more on personal experiences, their own or the anecdotal experiences of other people, as well as faith-based or speculation-based kind of areas. So I feel like they might be more comfortable with doubt in a way, and they might be more comfortable with approaching things from more of a in an artistic kind of way as well. They don't exclude the personal expression of oneself or others when it comes to the equation of trying to understand truth in general. Really trying to understand things from a more, I guess you could say, like in an emotional kind of a way. This is much different than scientific seekers who are the opposite. They tend to want to approach things more from a sort of like logic and evidence-based position. In order to be complete, spiritual seekers, though, they need to be able to understand that there is truth in being able to understand the scientific aspects of life as well. And logic and evidence is actually meant to serve to help the spiritual seekers who are going to be focusing a lot more on the higher SS index powers like Nai, Ni, Ji, and Zhai. That it's also important to want to, get the literal and the logic-based powers involved as well, because that will give their speculations more truth in a way. It will help it become much more grounded and a lot more following certain lines that are actually set in stone a lot more firmly, and that will give their intuitions and their passions a kind of strength which it otherwise would not normally have if they were to just focus entirely on spiritual the aspect of life. And so essentially the important thing is to want to understand that both sides are essentially two sides of the same coin or the same spectrum. There's a spiritual side, there's a scientific side, but they're both important and they both need to be understood correctly in order for them to be both appreciated accordingly to each other as well as, independently.
Good. And then Mitchell.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's a kind of rigor that comes with the logic and evidence-based powers, or the literal-based powers, that spiritual people or spiritual seekers, if they're not accustomed to it, they kind of get a little bit, I don't know, there's some kind of reaction that they get to it, right? It's just...
Well, it depends what you mean by rigor. Rigor can be associated with physicality. Rigor
Right.
can be associated with like academic, standards. But rigor can also be taken as how much energy is given to your personal relationships and how you maintain them and improve them. Rigor can be actually rigorously doubting. So actually, you can almost rigorously do any power.
Yeah, I noticed that. The wording, but there is some sort of like a thing. Like, haven't you ever seen like people who are like really
Well,
spiritual?
rigor can be applied to any power, but the two it's done, I think, most commonly is Z and V, which is physical rigor, a rigorous workout, and then intellectual, a rigorous academic curriculum. Those in colloquial,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
those are used the most. But really, you can be rigorous with anything. But Z and V
Yeah.
is how it's used colloquially.
In a lot of ways, we don't really use language necessarily. Like, we use language, differently than how we could use it. Like, we could say that G is rigorous when it gets like really worked up. That's like emotional rigor. But nobody would really. I mean, people generally don't say that. They don't generally use
It's
it to
usually,
describe
yeah,
when someone's being
academics,
emotional.
academics
So
and
it's,
athletics is the two that are.
But it technically you could say that. It's just sometimes
Yeah.
people don't tend to.
I guess what I was trying to say though was like rigor may not have been the right word, but there's a weakness at being too logical, too evidence-based, and then there's also a weakness at being too spiritual, not enough logic, not enough evidence-based,
Sure.
kind of stuff. And so with the scientists, they tend to be a little bit.
And these are broad
I think
statements
Mitchell-
because a lot of people are a combination of the two.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know that Mitchell Mitchell said something according like they exclude the spiritual experience, right, or something like that.
Well,
And then
anytime that's a trick. Would say with Podlair, we're going to be known as the people of many temples, because the trick is, say, social alchemy is keeping everyone one unit as a species, as a tribe, while setting aside different temples to do certain individual specialized stuff. It's tricky to balance to where the temple's like, yeah, we're all about Naiji, without saying, we're the greatest temple. All the other temples aren't as good as our temple because we're the Naiji temple. Do you know what I mean? And so that same thing happens pretty much across the board, is that in science, if a person sees themselves as a science seeker, that's good. But then they're like, I'm going to bonus stack being a science seeker. I'll make a temple of science. It'll be the most scientific. And sometimes they start becoming the mostest, trying to bonus stack. They actually become estranged from the other ways of thinking and being that they need to be complete. Like spiritual people, sometimes like the way to actually be the most spiritual, a lot of Naiji have thought this, is to check out as much as possible, to literally not give a flying F about reality. Reality isn't real. Yeah, it is. Come on, stop being silly. You know what I mean? So there's a tendency on both sides to become like a purist. And that's where the issue is. But basically, a scientist is a seeker. Whenever like, I'm a pure scientist, probably you stopped being a seeker a while back.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's like, I know there's like pure like, I mean, you can take like a biology class or something, right? Well, biology is more like a softer science, but pure, like a physics class or something. But I mean, there's still spiritual aspects of that.
Always, yeah.
I mean, it's like if you really want to explore,
You have
physics
to.
entirely, I mean, you have to get into theoretical concepts, and then you also have to talk about things like, okay, so if we're talking about all of physics, all of what's out there, there's like, what about, how does that relate to humans? That's a part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, so it's not every technically possible, but sometimes this is what you're talking, Glenn Mitchell has often alluded to, is sometimes people make the mistake that the best temple, it's actually supposed to be concentrated but porous. So it still gets influxes from what's around it. Sometimes people get into temple thinking, into lab thinking, and they try to make it so pure that it's actually now become, like I said, detached or strange from something that it really can't ever be pulled apart from. But they're thinking that they're bonus stacking it by doing that.
And so, essentially, I guess what I'm really asking then is, what are some of the drawbacks, or what are some of the like ways you can tell, like symptoms in a way, like this person has gone off the rails a little bit when it comes to spirituality or scientific angles. Like you can tell, like, oh, this person is too much in one area and not respecting the other area enough. Like,
well, there's a complicated answer and a simple answer. The complicated answer is basically going to be all the different principles one can have about believing things, and then you see what they say about that principle. So there's a lot of those. But what they all kind of share in common, this is a short answer, is a willingness, and we kind of recovered this, to get new truth and to be brave about it. Basically, they like the sport of getting wiser. and they are eager about doing it. And you can just smell those things, those two scents.
Right.
When you're trying to pursue truth, are they hungry or are they already satisfied?
I see.
See what you smell. It's binary. Are they hungry or are they already satisfied? If you feel that they're satisfied with their answers, they're done. Move on. No one should be satisfied. Then the other one is, I guess, more the discernment is they should be eager. Or do you smell them flinching? Those are two things. That's a short answer. Are they hungry and eager? Or are they slack? Are they complacent and cringy? That's what you look for. And the detail. If you're good at smelling that, trust me. When you get into the specifics of different principles, such as like Mitchell, a lot of times, like people have to follow logical fallacies, because they'll say stuff and they'll say I'm logical, but the way they said it, me and Mitchell talk about this like, I have a feeling you're not going to be. You know what I mean? You said you were logical. I'm a logical person. I know logic and blah. Yeah, but you said that in all caps. So I'm going to intuit that most likely you're not that logical. Then you talk with them, and yes, many logical fallacies are offended.
You sound like you're full of shit, sir.
Exactly. So yeah, the short answer is you'll smell it.
You'll be able to basically read it on a person, right?
Yeah, and those qualities that were mentioned in the earlier beats, which is there's a hunger for truth, and when it gets hard, you're like, this is where the real work begins. That's their spirit. When the workout of enlightenment gets hard, their attitude is, this is where the good stuff is at. That's their take on it. It's a spirit you guys all have, and that's why I enjoy your company. And a lot of humans don't have it where it should be, which is why I don't enjoy their company.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you got to carry their weight. You got to carry their weight, and it's unfair. All right. Did everyone go? Or Mitchell, you're not calling yet? Cool.
Right then. So, spiritual seekers are those who favor the use of personal experience and or speculation or faith to understand highest truth. And they often focus, because of that, on the upper area of the Estes Index, which has the powers that are more naturally suited to understanding and interacting with highest truth in terms of relationships and intuitions. And so, just like scientific seekers, to be complete, if they follow their spiritual seeking all the way, they will eventually bump into scientific truth, which they're going to need to integrate because it's all part of one holistic spectrum.
Bam. All right, Mitchell. I'm combining the next two. What are models of thought? What are belief systems?
Models of thought are usually...
Oh, yeah, we have to redo it first.
Models of thought are usually...
I like your spirit, sir. I like your spirit.
Call their attempts to define the structure and purpose of the human condition and the meaning of existence. And belief systems are usually what spiritual seekers call their attempts to define the structure and purpose of the human condition and the meaning of existence.
Models of belief and thoughts of systems. Systems of thought, models of belief, beliefs of that. You can switch them around.
Beliefs of models and thoughts.
But you know what? Seriously, the fact that it's really kind of like a word soup, that's because it is one thing. Really, the distinctions in the end, they're just things we made up.
Beliefs of models of thought systems.
What's your thought model belief system?
Well, this is a very hard one, so...
2 sentences.
Ben, did you want to...
Oh, sure, I can do that.
How's the best?
So,
Mitch, would you want to go? I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to go.
I referenced Ben because he went first. So I thought he had dibs on the first.
Yeah, let's just keep the pattern. Go ahead.
Dibs. Yeah.
I don't have dibs on anything. If somebody's ready before me, or somebody else is ready.
No, Ben, I think you're ready.
But yeah,
no,
I
like this pen. Let's keep doing
So so models thought is the way that scientific seekers tend to describe the way of understanding the human condition and the meaning of existence. Whereas belief systems is more how spiritual seekers tend to describe their understanding of the human condition and the meaning of existence.
I think that's pretty straightforward.
Go for it then. Take it on.
So models of thought is typically how scientific seekers approach trying to define in a structured kind of like definable way their attempts at being able to understand the pursuit of, you know, trying to discover the meaning of existence and the human condition. Whereas spiritual seekers, they'll do so, but they'll define their attempts, and their kind of like title for it is like a belief system. They'll call it that. They'll feel more comfortable with those kinds of words as far as like defining their attempts at, you know, trying to understand the spiritual pursuit of trying to understand the meaning of existence and the human condition.
Mitchell?
Yeah. Okay. So models of thought are usually what scientific seekers call their attempts to define the structure and purpose of the meaning of existence and human condition, and belief systems are usually what spiritual seekers do the exact same thing, call their attempts to define the structure and purpose of human condition and meaning of existence.
Bam. All right. Glenn, what is important to keep in mind when trying to understand different models of thought and belief systems? What context do they need to be understood in? How does one keep from being trapped by this context?
All right, so an important thing to keep in mind when trying to understand the various models of thought and belief systems is that they all serve the fundamental and evolutionary purpose of being operating systems to help one get to the highest headspace, heart space, and soul space. Since there has never been a seamless synergy of the scientific and the spiritual in all of human history, each of the numerous ways developed for finding and holding highest truth has corresponding pros and cons based on what aspects of highest truth have been discovered and integrated and which aspects have not. Therefore, the only way to rise above being trapped by the limitations of any particular way of understanding is to continually update one's highest understanding of truth as more aspects of the human condition and the meaning of existence become manifest and self-evident. What about if you were to say have of existence made manifest? I like that, but meaning of existence made manifest and self.
What's part is off?
Not off. I'm just saying.
What words were you
This is the
thinking?
very last sentence. I was just wondering if it was more aspects of the human condition and the meaning of existence made manifest. Would that work? Made manifest or become manifest? I've heard made manifest.
Let me see here.
be used. I don't want to make these things sound like critiques in a negative way.
No, that's fine. But in this case, I don't know if that word actually would quite work. Because
Yeah.
made manifest has a slightly different angle than
Right.
this does.
Yeah.
High standards is going to become manifest. No, yeah. I guess we might be saying we could say exist become made manifest, but it's a little.
That's too many words.
It's a little too many words. Yeah.
I don't think
It
that
just made me
sounds
think of
right.
when I saw manifest, I was like, made manifest.
Yeah, that is often used. That is strong, but unfortunately, the verbiage doesn't quite work in that situation.
Yeah, it's a more particular kind of usage of it, in a specific kind of context, which doesn't necessarily work for this. So it's fine.
All right, I think I can do this.
Go for it.
All right. So something that's important to keep in mind regarding these different models of thought and belief systems is that they all serve the evolutionary purpose of bringing humans to the highest headspace, heart space, and soul space possible. And they fall within the context of essentially that, as we mentioned, no model or belief system is complete. And at this time, there's been no model of thought or belief system that has created a seamless flow between science and spirituality in a way that correctly has a complete and seamless understanding of natural law. And as a result, each one, as we mentioned, needs to be given, its appropriate weight in the conversation. It needs to be appropriately acknowledged, the aspects that are truthful, the aspects that aren't correct. And that is something that we need to collaboratively work on and address. So to rise above the fact that no model of thought or belief system out there in the world right now is complete. Pod Lair, I mean, we still have stuff, to learn, although, we've actually bridged the gap between science and spirituality. We have holes to fill, and we have, things to always keep ever expanding and improving. So essentially what the goal is to continually update our understanding of natural law, acknowledge the truth that exists in all of the models out there, and keep rising above and updating our understanding to new models of thought, new ideas, as well as the existing ones.
Boom.
All right. So an important thing to want to keep in mind when approaching, trying to understand any sort of belief system or model of thought that exists is that their main purpose is essentially to try and understand truth in the most best way possible, and in the most evolutionary evolved kind of way as well. And so it's a very tall order for these belief systems to want to even attempt to try and do this, but that is essentially what they're trying to do. And so you need to understand that is something that one should be really careful about trying to go about, because they're all trying to essentially get one to the most highest head space, the most highest soul space, and the most highest heart space that one can possibly reach. And so the context that one needs to be able to approach all these things and all these models of thought and belief systems is that one should be cautionary in the sense that there has not been a model of thought or belief system out there that has been created by humans apart from Pod Lair, right?
Correct.
Apart from Pod Lair, that are able to respect that there is a scientific as well as a spiritual connection, and so there's a seamlessness to those two areas, to that dichotomy, and because of that, they're always going to come up a little bit short. They're always going to fall short, and so if you base your life on these systems and thoughts, they're going to basically limit you in a way that you don't want them to.
I'll just add in there that they don't have to, and that's the point. Okay, cool. Reformation is, yeah.
I know, maybe I was a bit too firm there, but yeah, they run the risk of essentially limiting you, and so you have to understand them from the correct headspace and perspective, which is that you understand them for what they are. So they do their job, and where they do their job well, you give them credence, right? But you at the same time have to understand they're limited in a way as well. And a way in which one can make sure that they don't fall into the trap of getting, stuck in any of these kinds of belief systems or models of thought is essentially to always be working towards trying to understand natural law, and never being satisfied. Essentially, always trying to. The wording that you use, Coach, I forget what it was exactly, but essentially to try and make sure that one is constantly trying to understand natural law. And it's an unfolding process, and it's never finished. It's never over, and you're always trying to develop your understanding more and more, and that is always going to be the main driver not trying to adhere oneself or to any sort of model, because any models are, they're in a way they're dead. But thoughts, they're always constantly evolving and constantly growing, and the models themselves get updated. So yeah, you always want to be making sure that you're updating your understanding and your thoughts as far as
You got it.
being in harmony with natural law and the mystery that is natural law, the unfolding mysteries.
You got it. Yeah, basically is separating methodology from purpose. So that's first, I mean, like when you approach different models, is that we all agree that the purpose is to be a heroic pioneer, true seeker, and then these various methodologies have various merits.
Yeah. You can codify, but the codes never actually
They're not the purpose, exactly. They're to aid in achieving the purpose. They are not the purpose in it themselves.
Yeah. Let's just Mitchell's turn.
So I have it that's just Mitchell.
That's right. Okay. Right. All right, then. An important thing to keep in mind when trying to understand different models of thought and belief system is that they all have the fundamental and evolutionary purpose of being operating systems to help one get to their highest head space, heart space, and soul space. So they need to be understood in the context that there has never been any seamless synergy of science and spirituality throughout human history. So each of the ways that have been put forward for understanding highest truth has pros and cons to it based on the aspects that they include or preclude. And one is kept from being trapped by this limiting context because you can keep updating your model of understanding highest truth just as an ongoing basis while new aspects of the human, well, not necessarily new, but aspects of the human condition and meaning of existence are newly made manifest.
Got it. Nice.
To you.
Indeed. Okay, so back to Ben.
Okay.
What does open table mean in PodLayer? What does it entail? How is superior understanding determined?
All right. The term open table refers to the ideal context for all seekers to come together to show, share, and speculate about what way of understanding the human condition and the existence they think or believe to be superior. This entails respect for all of the different approaches to working on the one great case that various seekers may have, while demanding respect from all those who wish to participate, for each other, and most importantly, for the man's highest truth makes on those who wish to understand it to a greater degree. Determining superiority and understanding highest truth has always been decided and always will be by superior performance and feats that indicate a seeker has a connection to some aspect of higher truth that must be acknowledged. I am ready to go on this one.
Do it.
So open table essentially refers to when all these various seekers, of natural law, they come together and there's some, this is the way, it's essentially how they go about determining which models and which ways of natural law are superior. And this essentially entails that everyone give respect to each other. If you go to a table, of some sort, generally, and it's, you should give a certain amount of respect to that ritual. And so you need to respect the various models that are out there. They're all here and people trying to contribute. And they all have some perspective of natural law, some model or belief system. No model or belief system is as big as it can be. We're always trying to expand and grow our understanding. However, at the same time, they need to also have respect, besides, for each other and their different models, they have to have respect for the ways of natural law and implications that has for somebody who's trying to grow and update their understanding of natural law, those who are actually trying to improve their model and the demands of that. They need to respect that ritual. If you say, oh, you shouldn't be trying to, give an updated perspective, or you're like offended that they're trying to, improve or comment or give critique on your model because they think it's better, you're just offended at that practice, then you're not honoring the way of natural law, the way that works, the way in which you actually update and grow your model or belief system. So it's important that that's respected. And this superior understanding is always determined by performing superior feats that demonstrate some higher, that indicate or demonstrate some higher understanding of natural law that is beyond someone else's model of an understanding or beyond the models of understanding that people are aware of.
Got it. Now, just throw one thing out there that at Open Table, the general vibe is not to necessarily say which overall ways of coming things are superior, although that sometimes will have to come up. But that's not the focus. It's actually the positions, and different ways have a collection of positions on things about natural law. And so they may actually be correct on some positions, maybe even very correct. Some things they're kind of vague on, and other things they're really wrong on. And so each thing is kind of like its own little legal case, like your belief on, equality for, say, men and women. Then there's equality on race. And there's, there's all these different principles, and then it's basically their take on that principle. And then it is weighed, and natural law will say,
okay. In the beat, it says I was confused because it said speculate about what way of understanding the human condition and the existence they think or believe to be superior. But I think what that just means is that it's not necessarily saying which one's the best comparatively. It's just saying these are the superior ways that we go about things. I think I got caught up in the word superior and I sort of misinterpreted what I was saying.
And just, there is actually that element because, a model of thought or belief system is a collection of its various principles. That's what makes it up.
Yeah, and there is going to be, comparisons within certain areas, but they're not necessarily going to be, you might have one specialty that's on quantum physics, but that's going to be that's going to be unrelated largely to the more spiritual disciplines, right? It might be related, but a lot of the time it won't be, right? So both those areas have something to contribute, but that they think are superior ways of understanding what they're studying, but they don't necessarily mix with each other. But they could, they could
exactly.
Have disagreements that need to be addressed. So
bingo.
Okay, I think I want to try. So the term open table essentially means that everyone is approaching trying to understand the meaning of existence and the human condition. They all come together to want to come and share, show, and speculate on what, basically the principles that make up their model of thought as far as understanding, the meaning of existence and the human condition. And put forward their model thought, which they think is superior as their particular way of doing things and living their life by this kind of codified way of living. So this obviously brings with it a sense that, you know, we're all here to essentially be pioneers of truth, trying to understand truth, and it's all about trying to reach highest truth possible. And with that being the sort of the main thing that we're trying to do here, there's obviously going to have to be respect for each other and all the different seekers that are out there that are going to be positioning their ideas forward and putting them for, you know, up for, you know, like putting them forward. But, you know, obviously there's going to have to be respect for this person is a truth seeker trying to do their thing, and so they're going to bring their model, and so it might not necessarily agree with mine, but I'm also going to have to respect theirs, and they're going to have to respect mine. But ultimately, the most important thing to want to respect is natural law truth, and trying to serve that as best as one possibly can. And so essentially, if that's going to be the position that everyone's going to be approaching it from, there's obviously going to be certain areas where truth is going to, well, hold on. In order to actually make sure that one is, you know, serving highest truth properly, there's the barometer that's being used is what was mentioned as feats and stuff. And so, hold on, I don't like that. I don't understand how to answer the last part there.
Basically, specifically seeker feats, which we'll be enumerating coming up.
What does that mean exactly?
That's going to be enumerated coming up, but I can give you a foreshadowing. It's the things that theories and belief systems have always used. Bountifulness, you're able to produce more. If your windmill makes more wind energy than the previous windmill design, it's better, because the point of the windmill is to make energy from air. So the windmill that makes better energy from air, it's the better windmill. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, it's so much more complicated than that, but yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and there's 5 of them actually. The power prediction, if you know what's going on. By the way, that's how astronomy got taken away from spiritual models. Astronomy used to be covered by the spiritual guilds in most tribes before science came along. But then after a while, their predictions on what the stars were going to do weren't so great. The physicists had better predictions, and now they are given the credence because they can predict what nature is going to do. There's 5 of them. We'll get to them, but
yeah, I mean, you can just tell they're more in alignment than the astrologers, for example. Although obviously there's, you know, a lot of scientists have very stale and, you know, dry understanding of the universe.
which is why they won't have as much of the feat as they could, and generally some of the feats will be stronger than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And there's still things that the spiritualists are better at than scientists. So even though they're generally given more credence, there's, you know, there's weaknesses that they could be more complete with that the spirituals have.
True that.
Okay, let me try that again. So the open table basically refers to a practice that Father is going to be putting forward, in the sense that everyone is going to be approaching as a truth seeker, trying to understand highest truth as much as possible, and the meaning of existence and all that stuff. Meaning of existence and the purpose, meaning of existence and the human condition. So everyone has certain kinds of models that they come from, that they're going to be positioning and putting forward, and that will be what they think is best in a way. But everyone is there to try and like understand highest truth, and that's the main goal. And as far as their personal model goes, it has to be able to stand up to scrutiny and of highest truth and what that is, and that's how it's going to be measured essentially. They all have to be respected, and everyone that's participating has to respect one another. But the way in which one is judged based on whether or not they are doing a good job, and whether or not their principles are good, or whether or not they need work, are essentially that there are certain feats that come along with your model that you need to be able to, that you're going to be tested upon. A certain level of scrutiny as far as your ideas go. You need to be able to pass those, your ideas of thought. They all need to be able to be measured in some kind of a way, and that's how they're going to be measured essentially. Whether or not they work essentially, and whether or not they capture natural law and understand it correctly in the proper context, or if they don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mitchell?
Yeah, it's funny because when I think of feats, I think of like V-centered feats. Like you need to, in order to prove that gravity works.
No, but if you think about one of the things that science, one of its greatest powers, that has pushed back, for example, a lot of ignorance, is the feat of prediction, the feat of bountifulness, of being able to produce superior grain by understanding how the way of botany really works as compared to what people thought it worked. Does that make sense? So whenever, because if you come from tribe A, right, you study history, it's nothing but this. Tribe A meets tribe B meets tribe C, and some things will be passed and some things will not. And generally, if you look at another person and you're like, does their way have anything to it? The way humans are designed, the only way we know how to do things is to come up with some kind of feat requirement that proof of concept is a feat. Literally, it's a feat of proof of concept. So you have to have these feats to show that what you're doing is producing a greater result. That if I, all things being equal, was to use this way of doing things versus this, which would actually make for the greatest awesomeness, the greatest wonder, the greatest being in alignment with the way you're supposed to be doing it. And there's a lot to this, but there's 5, which we're going to get to now, things that have generally been accepted when people argue. You can listen to arguments between different religions, or between religion and scientists, or between different scientists. In those arguments, they generally will use one or more of these 5 things to show that's why this way is the way that really knows what it's doing. And they're not wrong. Now, people often will be confusing, use lots of logical fallacies, fib about their feats. That happens a lot. But it's not wrong to basically say, well, if you know aerodynamics better than I do, then your plane should fly better. And it will. Maybe not that exact one, but if you fly 1,000 planes with better aerodynamics, and the other person flies 1,000 planes with poorer aerodynamic design, they will have a poor performance. The other will have the superior performance. Does that make sense?
Right.
And you'll see the thought coming up. I can name them. They're basically bountifulness, being able to do more with what nature gives. If you know what nature wants you to be doing, then you can do more with its water, more with its wind, more with its atom cracking, whatever, than if you don't. Prediction, if you know the way of nature, then nature surprises you less. People who are surprised by nature generally look up to, and they should, people who are less surprised, who are able to predict it. Third, discovery, finding new things. If you know the way of nature better, it means you also will be able to discover its next reaches sooner. Those who are further up the peak of enlightenment, they can get to the next peak easier. That's just true. Fourth is universality. Does what you're saying make sense in all tribes? Water being a gas, liquid, and solid does. That goes through it. But so does the need for, if not prayer, some kind of consciousness focusing ritual. That's a thing. Everywhere you go, humans have some kind of consciousness focusing ritual. So that has a universality to it. Certain things don't. Not everyone necessarily has to pray to a deity. That's optional. Having a ritual to focus consciousness, that does not seem to be optional. So anyway, and accountability. Does it self-correct? So for example, does the model actually, or the way of doing it, does it let you know when you were wrong? Does it have a moral or methodology way to it that if you're making errors, it will inform you you're making errors? Those are the 5 things. There's more, but those are the big 5 that I would generally look for. 2 things. Do they have them? And are they real or illusion? Those are 2 questions. Because if they do know what they're doing, they should be able to produce those feats. They're people that subscribe to that way should be able to do those feats.
It looks like we're kind of coming up on time. Do you want to do secret feats next time?
Yeah, we will. It's just Mitchell. I was just going to let Mitchell go, and I think it's a great place to start. We're all set up for that next time. I can tell we're already.
Sounds good. It's good kind of transition for
Yeah,
next time.
you literally just did prime us there.
All right then. 1 second.
Oh, just as being Jez hunters, his little crash course, you probably already know a lot of instinctually. But if you're trying to convince someone to change their way, those are the 5 best arguments humans have ever thought of ever. I'm not even kidding. There's lots to it. There's lots of variation, specialization. But if you want to convince someone that they should try a different way of doing it, you'll want to hit them with one of these 5 feats. The more you can hit, the better. The more convincing your argument will be.
I really like the universality one. Like it takes that tends to be more on the used more on the spiritual end of things when you're trying. I mean, it can be scientific too, though. You know, when you abstract to a very universal understanding. Yeah. Like you can have universal like mathematical principles and stuff.
But I think one of the things when it comes to scientific method, it's repeatable in any circumstance, any situation.
Yep. It's of course very mathematical and it's abstracted a lot. You know, scientific method being universal. It's not talking about any one thing in particular. It's talking about like this is universal to all applications of science, effectively.
But they both have holes and weaknesses, I think, in each of those feats. But you're right; they do often get that.
I don't think the scientific method's like absolutely perfect or anything.
No, but it does have some very strong points to it.
Yep.
What are some weaknesses to the scientific?
They on all these there's lots to them. So let's take, for example, the power of prediction. They're very strong on predicting, say, things that are more forensic and logical levers, so forth. But when things actually get into fuzzier areas, this is a well-known phenomenon, for example, that actually a lot of times scientists aren't very great at predicting human behavior. So actually there are people who are outside the hard sciences that tend to be better at predicting behavior than hard scientists. That's well known. Now, they say those are fuzzy predictions. True, but they are predictions that are more accurate when you come at them sometimes less strictly scientific method way of coming at things. Another one they can hit is bountifulness. Yes, they can make the plane have more bountifulness of the wind. They can make more bountifulness through cracking atoms of energy, but, and they hit this a lot, they sometimes don't seem to have the bountifulness of joy that religious traditions offer. They get hit with that argument a lot, and it's a serious argument. It's because they aren't peaking as well as they could, and people can sense, you talk science being all strong, but how come you're peaking just as a human? I don't observe you peaking with the bountifulness that wows me. That's an argument that a lot of, for example, scientists get from the other side, and it's a strong one that moves a lot of people because they're like,
because if they're not doing that, then I mean, they're more prone to be lazy. They're more prone to do worse work. Because like getting that inspiration, you get more insights and you get more confidence and motivation that allows you to access and do more things you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So it actually has a negative impact on the work if you aren't peaking as well as you can be through that sense of joy and so forth.
Right, that's a good one. That's a good one actually, because
and that's why, for example, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson is seen as very strong, and his way Dawkins is too, a little harder, but still seen very strong this way. They have this exuberance about what they believe in. They talk, Sagan, they talk about the sublimeness of the aurora borealis and things like that, and no one can question the bountifulness of their joy. But a lot of scientists, well, you did logical fallacy 3, so haha, you're stupid, I'm smart. And that part they're right on, but they're not right that people are like, you don't seem like a very bountiful of spirit human. And so that is a very, very, very convincing argument.
Yeah, you have to be able to be moved by logic and the truth of nature, not just kind of like, I don't know, like just taking it in this sort of like in a sort of like unemotional kind of way, right? You have to be.
You need both, and that's why, like I said, it's not as simple as scientists do more with universality or less or prediction. It's what kinds of predictions are we talking about? What kinds of bountifulness? What kinds of universality? And you'll see different models will have good or bad scores on different areas. And we're going to size up all the big ships. But we should let Mitchell go because we run over. But this is exciting. Go ahead, Mitchell. Close us out.
Then, so the open table is the ideal context for theorists to come together and show, share, and speculate about different ways of understanding the human condition, meaning existence, that people believe possibly superior or otherwise. And this entails respect for different approaches to working on the great case, and demanding respect from those who want to participate, and that is respect for one another, but in particular for the demands of the highest truth for all who want to understand it. And superior understanding is determined by performance in these seeker feeds that we've been talking about that show an undeniable connection with higher truth.
Boom. Oh, and I'll just end for the evening. It's very important you understand these feats in both ways. That as compared to they don't have anything, they have no feats. That's what I was kind of talking about prior. But there's another one equally as dangerous. They ascribe the wrong feats, right? War. We want a war. That means truth favors us. They either won't have feats, or they will. People aren't doing the right things. They will confuse people as to what feats actually say. You know what I mean? Because you'd be like, oh, you said that water boils at this temperature, which is true, but the king cut off all your heads of you and all your family. So actually, that's true. You know what I mean? So actually, you have to make sure that the correct feats that really matter for distinguishing superiority or value are being used. If they don't want to do feats, that's wrong automatically. And when they do feats, be aware, most humans will try to make up feats that will bolster their case. They'll try to make connections that might not even be there, or try to overly weight feats that they happen to be personally strong at. That's human nature. So feats don't count, or these feat counts that really obscure the truth of things. Make sense?
It's so weird how people they always want to, either talk themselves down or talk themselves way up. It's
it's true.
It's like in a disproportional way. Like people talk themselves down all the time. Oh, I'm just born bad at math. I can't become anything good with that ever. Or, they'll talk about, how strong they are. There might be some truth to that, but people are often really cocksure about themselves too.
Yeah, having proper ego is actually a very difficult note to keep on.
Yeah, just having it at that right level where you're giving yourself appropriate, respect to what you can do, but you're not overestimating it or talking yourself down too much.
Yeah, very good point. Because what we are dealing with here, and this is why these principles are so important, we've been going over so far, setting the scene, is it takes a very large ego to try and understand the fundamentals of everything, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, that much ego corrupting, becoming problematic. And the way that I think works best, and most truth seekers already know this, is you allow a higher truth and the service you give it to be your ego. However big your ego needs to be, like when Mitchell is breaking down someone's arguments, if they're actually saying incorrect things, then you use as much ego as required to state true things. But you don't need more. No less, no more. But there is an amount needed, and that's the one. So if you kind of hold on to it, the ego side kind of makes itself. But you're right, most people try to make their own ego, and when they do that, they tend to devalue or overvalue it.
I just wanted to point out real quick, it's just on a
Okay,
on
but
a separate.
if anyone has to go ahead and sign up. I understand we went over. But you were saying, Glenn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, when it comes to the questions, I really like having the questions be more like the way that they, like we were talking in the beginning of the Hangout. If we do it that way, where they're easy to understand, they're hit on the sentences and all that sort of stuff, I feel like we'll be able to optimize being able to do the beats that much faster as well. So I just wanted to, yeah, that was something on my mind I wanted to point out.
Cool. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right, cool. Then
You're
we're on
good.
prime for next time. Look forward to it.
Awesome.
Secret
Great,
Beats.
guys. You have a
Have a
good
good
day.
day.
See you guys.
So yeah.